Oh,
Why the monkey crossed the road?
Your mom was over there?
Yeah, so Gen X of you. You threw out the mom joke.
Can't help it.
Your mom can't help it. So if you're the kind of person that can't move on to other things because you're a perfectionist, or you can't complete projects because they're not
Good enough.
good enough, standing up to your standard, this is a good podcast for you to listen to. In fact, what's great about it is we spent the last hour trying to perfect our video and our audio so that our video about imperfectionism would really stand out and be its best. So that's what we're talking about today.
So glad you're sharing that.
It happens to all of us.
The point is that we've been making videos for a while now. And when we first started, the biggest challenge we had was that both of us are on camera, and camera does not like both of us being on camera. So
And it wants to focus right here
we've been
instead of
dealing.
over here.
So we've been dealing with how do we get us both on camera? Most videos, anyway, multiple cameras, whatever. So we're doing this. We don't have a studio and a team doing videos for us. We're just doing it. And from the beginning, we've been doing it, and we've been putting out our videos. And as we learn and grow how to make them better, we replace them. And
Yep. And we don't need to make them perfect because obviously none of this would even be recorded if that was the case.
the content is the point. And
Yes.
we want to talk about how so many people, and ourselves included, over time have been held up by trying too hard or wanting to impress the wrong person, maybe. I mean,
Yeah.
worrying about the wrong person's opinion, or not measuring up or comparing yourself with someone who is in a different league than you are. It's just gonna stop you.
Yep. And so we're going to go through different definitions as we understand them of describing what perfectionism is and what we've encountered in our own individual stories with it, how we feel about it individually and as a couple, how it affects us. And so we just start off by describing, how would you describe perfectionism? Because I think my description is a little different.
I think for me, perfectionism is almost not a good thing. And for myself, I've been taught from a young age to strive for excellence and to do things well, and to care about what you're doing, to put out quality work, but not to the point of not getting anything done or accomplished or put out. So I started working at a young age for my dad, who was, I wouldn't say he was even a perfectionist, but he really had high standards. We had a bakery, and it was a gourmet bakery because we didn't cut corners. We wanted to create a quality product, and we did. We had amazing, amazing products. That bakery is still in existence today. It opened in 1989, if that tells you anything.
And your dad was a hard worker.
We owned that bakery from 1989 to 1998. And then we sold it to another family who is still running it today. So yeah, my dad was an incredibly hard worker, businessman. He had no business being a baker, but he was also the kind of person who really liked to do things for people. And that was part of I think part of the excellence in our family bakery was he asked the neighborhood, well, what kind of business do you guys want? I'm gonna open something. And they all said a bakery. So he did it, and he did it well. And like I said, the longevity of that place, it's in Hoffman Estates, Illinois. It's now called Peterson's Tasty Delight Bakery. It is still there. And when you walk in now, when I walk in now, I haven't been there since about 2017, 18. My dad passed away in 2018. So I was in Chicago then, and I did go in and did get some stuff, and a lot of it is still there from the way we built it. So there's kind of a cool thing with that. But we always wanted things to be really good. We used butter instead of shortening. We used high quality ingredients, and we really wanted our stuff to be good. It was fresh. We threw away so much stuff every day because he was insistent on that level of quality. So to me, perfectionism, kind of getting back to that, it's not so much it's not always such a good thing because it keeps you from actually producing. So for me, I like to say I strive for excellence than I'm a perfectionist. There's definitely some things that I've worked on for a while and felt like this isn't done yet. This isn't good enough yet, I've written and published several books for myself and other people. And sometimes you just have to call it and decide when it's done enough.
Yep.
Yeah. So what's your take?
It's very similar to me. I've never struggled with perfectionism. It's very similar to what you were just saying. My story is before we began, well, we met shortly, like 5 years ago almost, as the recording of this video.
We're rounding up to 5 now.
Yeah. This November. Well, we met in 2019 of
Yeah.
November. So
Yeah.
we both had really well-established lives before we met. And I took to the arts at 4 years old. I remember the day, the time, the location. I heard my mom's voice in my head. And so I was always really good at it. I had quite an aptitude for it. I even began making money at it as a very young age. So as an illustrator and then a designer, I had a lot of great mentors. I had a lot of heroes, people that I modeled myself after. For me, the issue wasn't perfectionism. It was, what's the level of quality that needs to be there for it to be professional, to be intentional, to be really good. And once it's reached certain benchmarks, just go with it. For instance, one of the jobs I had was I was the senior illustrator at the state newspaper at the Arizona Republic. And for me, that was a fairly prestigious job. That was the culmination of a lot of my work. And because of all the different styles that I can work in, they said, go for it. And as a perfectionist, I would have just struggled and choked at that job, because if you have to do 7 or 8 pieces a week and they have to be based on a deadline and a current event story, something like breaking news, this thing happened. Jeremie, draw that. I have now to get it done.
Well, you were also hired to fill the shoes of a team because of your ability to produce in so many different styles. So if you were holding up for perfectionism and getting everything right, you never would have gotten that stuff out. So one of Jeremie's abilities is he's been an illustrator not only his whole life in this lifetime, but in
probably
many lifetimes. If you're into that stuff, we had a really cool experience about that in Egypt, and activation and understanding of his artistic ability is deep in his soul. Let's just put it that way.
So I was very fortunate. Me and some friends in the 80s, when we were all teenagers, we had a mentor named Scott Rosema. So one of the things would be like, if you want to draw an owl, well, okay, what species? That would be one of the questions. So a perfectionist would be like, well, it doesn't look exactly like the, snowy horned owl. Skip that. Does it look like a competent professional owl? Now, like, this is a really, like, we're definitely on a vague sort of boundary around what we deal with perfectionism, but the idea is simply we expect quality and we expect our best effort. And when it's reached a certain benchmark, we let it go.
I think that's it. Our best effort and benchmark. So is the job done? Yes. Is it done well enough? Yes, then it's done. And I think that that's something that the struggle with people who struggle with perfectionism is that they don't ever feel like it's good enough. So it's never done. And that can come from a lot of different places.
And I ran into a lot of that in my life, in the different jobs I've had, whether I've been a project manager, self-employed, whatever the case is. For me, this is the second part of it, is this is how I've come to understand those who struggle with perfectionism. And then you have your own version of it. I have mine. The one for me that I noticed the most loudly was people that call themselves a perfectionist. Underneath it all, they were afraid, and there was fear underneath it. There's lots of reasons for that fear. Some people have ADHD, and there's all of these different stories that are playing out within them, whether they're self-inflicted, whether that happened as an inheritance as childhood, whether it's legitimate or not. If I've seen people that have perfectionism, they're afraid that if they put their work out on the table, then they're going to be judged just like everyone else. And they're so afraid of being judged. And that could come from, let's see, number one, their impression of themselves and what they think they're supposed to live up to. And that usually is a story that got embedded into them, like, you're not good enough. So they're striving for some bar that they don't maybe even have defined. The second one is they're afraid of being abandoned or disrespected or not liked by their peers. So they have an idea of what other people think of them. And I don't know if this is like kind of a side byproduct of this. If you're worried about what other people are thinking of you might be shocked to realize how few people think about you every day. Most people think about themselves very deeply.
Well, the truth is we all think about ourselves first because
Yes.
we are living in ourselves in our own experience, and to consider other people at all is something you have to do consciously because you have to interact with other people. And I think having a job when deadlines, expectations, like kind of a project outline with a thing to get done is one thing. But, the perfectionism spans across all aspects of life too. If you're constantly trying to finish something or make it just right, or, looking at why things don't ever seem to be good enough, might be a good idea. So for me and my interest in excellence, and again, back to my experience, I started working with my family in this bakery, and I was 14 when I started doing that. So it wasn't just excellence, it was attention to detail. And attention to detail to some people doesn't mean anything. But when you're working for someone like my dad, his attention to detail was so intense that he would test people to see if they would notice things, and they would constantly fail these tests because it was stuff that the average person didn't notice. And for me, attention to detail is another superpower that some people have and some people don't. And being, in that pursuit of excellence, the attention to detail really helps maintain that high level because you don't miss things. You're paying attention and you see the bigger picture. So this whole conversation about perfectionism and being okay with being an imperfectionist is really about giving yourself permission to complete things, move forward, get out of that stuck space of trying too hard to get it a certain way when it really doesn't matter.
Yeah. So some of the ways that perfectionism has affected my life, and this is a potentially good takeaway. If you're one of the people that struggle with this, we're not judging, and we respect whatever journey you're on, and you have your reasons. First question I would ask you is, does your standards, whether they're achievable or not, like, first of all, ask yourself, do I even know what my standards are? Because I came to a realization about myself, and the way I made the analogy was I had a picture of myself the way I'm supposed to be right now, and it was like a balloon floating over here in an indescript space and time and location that I could never put anything specific on. It was just this feeling that was just making fun of me and making me frustrated and self-conscious.
Well, it wasn't in the present. It
No.
was a future idea that didn't really exist.
So if you have one of those, we welcome you and we invite you to take some time to understand why. Because then the next piece to that would be, how is it affecting the people in your life? If your perfectionism is just keeping you stalled and you're dealing with consequences you bring on yourself, that's one thing. And nobody wants that, of course.
Well, what did you do when you figured out that there was a bubble?
Well, it was for a whole other context.
Well,
For me, it was gratitude. So that's like a very different conversation. I'm not sure how to bridge it, but I do know that there was a standard I was holding for myself that was completely out of reach. It was in an indescript place.
I think it's really relevant because gratitude is relevant to that perfectionist mindset of be grateful that it's good enough, and be okay with what is instead of trying to strive for something that isn't. And that might be the perfectionist jump is I want it to be better. I want it to be something else, but that thing may be out of reach. It may not be possible to even get to that. So just
Right.
being content and grateful that I did this and this is good enough and I'm going to submit this, or I'm going to say I'm done now with this.
Yeah, it goes back to the fear. What are you afraid of, that if it isn't what you consider perfect, which I'll bet is such a moving target you could never define it,
Mm.
but what are you afraid of? What is the consequence that you think is going to happen? How people are going to feel about you, think about you, whatever. And back to my other point, which was, how is it affecting the other people around you?
Mhm.
Do the people in your life, your family, your spouse, your partners, are they struggling in a life with you because your perfectionism is affecting them too? That's a really important question to ask yourself and consider. Because when you can be grateful for the skills that you have and look at them in proportion and be honest with them, then you can, as they say in the arts, an artist never finishes a project, they just abandon it when it's done.
You can always do more, and that's the
Yeah.
point.
Or you can do another one and you can do it again. One of the things about being a competent at anything is practice. How many times does an athlete practice a particular thing that they're doing? How
Mhm.
many times does a basketball player practice the same freaking shot? How many times do these really advanced people that you probably respect or care about go back to the basics and get them back to their roots
Yeah.
and then build forward again? You have to do many iterations of something before you can say, oh, I got it. When I
Mhm.
was trying to draw hands, I must have 5 sketchbooks full of hands. As a teenager, drawing hands.
I can't draw hands, and I don't really care that I can't draw hands. Drawing has never been my strong suit. I love painting, but it's not a precise thing. It's a free flowing expression. So I don't feel like I can ever do it wrong because I just do it. So
Yeah.
so if someone was to look at one of my free flowing paintings and say, "Oh, you didn't do that right," I'm like, "Well, you didn't know what I was doing." So there's no expression. But if you're trying to draw a human hand, and you know what a human hand looks like, so you know what it should look like. So, there's a practice there. It is like a practice of anything else. And when you look at someone who's amazing at something and realize how much time they've spent doing that thing over and over and developing those skills and developing those practices, we all can get good at stuff.
Yeah. And sometimes you have an aptitude for it and sometimes you don't. There's a fallacy out there in education that gets debated a lot. Should you stop doing the thing you're excellent at and really focus on the thing that you're weak at to get better at it? Or are you going to stop wasting time on something you don't really have an aptitude for and really live up to the thing you're great at and really excel at it?
Yeah, or multiple things. And that's a difference between us as well, is Jeremy's been on an artist, illustrator, creative path his whole life. And I've been on the more Renaissance journey of doing and learning a lot of different things. So I'm good at a lot of things, but I'm not a master of any of them. I'm that the I'm doing that, and that's okay with me because I like trying new things. So I have the ability to do a lot of different things and learn quickly and observe and pick up skills, because that's again how I started with my life journey working in my own family was, well, you got to learn how to do all the things to be able to run this business eventually. So
So we want to leave you with some ideas on what you can do about it. If you consider yourself a perfectionist, first thing is we want to tell you you're amazing and we respect you. And ask you, first of all, what is it you're afraid of? What's the story you tell yourself? And can you even identify and write down and be specific about what you think a perfectionist is and what it would look like instead of how it's supposed to feel or whatever pressure you put on yourself?
mhm.
If you can't define it, then you can't achieve it. So we'd like to leave you with some simple takeaways, some things that you can think about if you really want to get past the perfectionism part of your life, if it even exists in any form or any capacity. So the first thing is, as we were saying earlier, identify what is it you're afraid of. Try to get to the real heart and the root of it. Look at what's affecting you. What are the thoughts in your head? What are the things you say to yourself when you're alone? What comes up for you and how do you feel when you're in the middle of a project that you start, this isn't perfect. Take some time and really connect with yourself and go, what's present with me at the moment, and identify and pay attention to it. The second part is what's where did it come from? How long has this been in the way and who is it affecting? In addition to yourself, is it affecting other people? How does that make you feel? What does that do in your body? And then finally, we just want to say we have a simple solution for this. And she's going to talk about our what we have to offer you in a minute. But what's one step you can take? This has to be simple. And when we say simple, we don't mean that it's simple and it's meaningless. We mean that what is one simple step you can take when you catch yourself into that pattern of perfectionism? When you're feeling like this isn't good enough or whatever the case is, what you experience in that moment, what's one shift you can make, what's one pattern you can break, and I'm going to do this one thing, and start setting up a pattern for not being in the space where all of these triggers start happening that get you thinking this way. You know what I'm saying? And oh, go ahead.
Oh, if you like these kind of conversations, this is what we like to talk about, is self-discovery, figuring out who you are, what you're good at. And we offer a lot of different resources for doing that. So one of our favorite things is our rebooting,
Yes.
starting over. When you get kind of stuck, or you hear something like this and you start wondering, am I a perfectionist? We've got a whole bunch of resources that will help you figure this stuff out. The Gen X Reboot is a 3-step process.
Yep.
Go ahead and get the free course. It's called the Gen X Refresh, which is sort of like refreshing your computer
Yes.
page when it says not responding. And it just really helps you understand that no matter what you're doing and where you're at in life, when you're looking for resources like this, the fact that you're even listening to this podcast right now, it means that you're trying to figure something else out.
Yep.
So we'd love to get to know you, and you get to know us as well. And we've got all kinds of cool stuff.
We certainly do. And it's all very simple. You get to do simple things that are not necessarily simple in meaning. They're simple in actions you can take to give yourself a chance to experience the change that you need, one little simple step at a time.
This is getting back to the basics.
Yeah.
and understanding that nothing is really that difficult if you can slow down and take an honest look at yourself, where you're at, where you're being held up, and how to move forward again.
Yep. It's perfect for you. The link's below.
We'll see you next time.
Take care, everyone.
Ah! Oh! Oh! Ah! Oh! Oh!